That's right, a little Billy Bragg and Wilco right there from their wonderful, wonderful record, Mermaid Avenue, which, of course, is right down in Coney Island, which is where Woody Guthrie lived in New York City when he was here and with his family. And Walt Whitman's Niece, the name of that tune, and played specifically because we are celebrating today the birth date of Mr. Walt Whitman, which was actually on the 31st. This is my first show since then, so, give me a break. That's the story. And I know you guys wait all year long for Little Whitman. And right now we have, as we do yearly, we have our my co-host in this particular event, Mankh. Mankh, how are you?
Good, thanks, Finn. It's great to be back with everybody again.
And it's great to be here. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
We're banging into everything, you and I, over here. But, so it's Whitman's birthday. How old would old Walt be today?
It would be 194.
194.
Born 1819, so a bunch of years, it'll be his 200th.
Wow, only 6 years from now. So
yeah.
when we do this in 6 years, we'll have to make a specific note that is as if everyone else won't be reminding us. Very good, very good. So how did you... Just before we get into the meat of the program here, how did you get involved in Whitman?
Gosh, I vaguely remember just probably more than 20-something years ago, just hearing, I think it was Garrison Keillor. I mean, I probably heard of Whitman in college and all that, but heard some Garrison Keillor reading probably Song of Myself on the radio, and it's just some beautiful passages, and I was so stirred by it that got me into Whitman, and then moving, to Long Island. Obviously, the patron saint poet, having been born in West Hills, right near Huntington.
The Bard of West Hills, yes.
And so that got me more and more into Whitman, and just reading his work is quite amazing.
Okay, were you inclined to be a poet before you really delved into him, or?
Oh yeah, because I started I remember writing a lot in 5th grade, so I don't think they did Whitman in.
Well, if you live on Long Island.
High school.
If you're on Long Island, they actually do some Whitman at all grade levels.
High school, I mean, there's some that there's like probably the Noiseless Patient Spider.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of stuff. They probably don't get into his more, his manly love, his love of everybody.
His dirty stuff.
His all kinds of stuff that Whitman's into, and traveling all over and hanging out with hobos and this and that. So. Yeah,
but the good thing about most Long Island schools, anyway, from what I understand, is that they do recognize Whitman as a great poet. Certainly one of the first truly American voices in poetry. Okay, so you're also a publisher, right?
Yep.
And a few years back, and we've been talking about this every year, and I still love it, and I pick it up on a regular basis to delve into it. You co-edited this wonderful little collection called Primal Sanities.
Yep.
Which is a collection of not so much Whitman poetry, but poets inspired by Whitman.
Yeah, there's one little journal entry from Whitman, and a bunch of quotes. But it was one day realizing just on the poetry scene on Long Island, of which there's tons of people, how many people were, had written some poem about Whitman or referenced Whitman. And it was kind of like, hey, let's put together an anthology for all these people as a place to put it all and a tribute to Whitman. So George Wallace, first poet laureate of Suffolk County, helped out a lot. Annabelle Mosley, she helped with the process a lot. It's mostly poems, a lot of poems and essays. I forgot how many numbers, like probably 30-something people in it. And it's really a tribute to him. So it's about him, and it's great to read him himself. But it's neat to hear other people's take on him. It varies.
Right, and it's a great anthology, and with a whole bunch of local people, but not just local, international people contributing, and it's just a great compendium there you have brought together.
You
and George.
Pedro Mir, he's I got to look up the bio again, because Pedro Mir is from Dominican Republic. Jonathan Cohn, who I think teaches at Stony Brook, he translated one of his from the Spanish, so he's sort of like one of the most esteemed people in here. He was the national poet of the Dominican Republic.
Okay, so it's an international cast.
Yeah, barely.
Because Whitman's influence spreads across a wide area.
Oh yeah,
and in fact, there's probably no modern poet who hasn't, even if they don't think they have been influenced by Whitman, even indirectly.
One time I was at the Walt Whitman birthplace in Huntington, which is a wonderful place. There's lots of poetry going on there. There's a series there that George helps organize. So check out their website. But I think a couple from Finland was visiting. I mean, people literally come from around the world to go to that place and touch Whitman ground. And the joke is that more people know where the mall is than they know where the birthplace is.
That's right. Isn't he the guy that built the mall? Kind of a joke, right? Exactly. And we do talk about the mall at different times during our little talks here. But yeah, so maybe you should start off doing a little reading for us, either from, how about something from Whitman himself?
Yeah.
Now, of course, Leaves of Grass, for those of you who do not know, is his kind of more seminal, all-encompassing work. The poem he continued to work, the free verse he continued to work on his entire life.
Yeah, he revised it. His whole life was really, Robert Savino has a poem in the book about his whole life was a revision of this book.
Yeah, it's a constantly evolving poem.
Yeah.
Constantly evolving work, just as life is. What would you like to read for us?
I actually picked he's most known for his sort of long-winded, on and on poems. So I was leafing through yesterday and found a short one. So I want to read this really short one to start off.
Sure.
And it's quite interesting with all the technology that we have in the world today that he wrote this in the 19th century. It's called No Labor-Saving Machine. No labor-saving machine, nor discovery have I made, nor will I be able to leave behind me any wealthy bequests to found a hospital or library, nor reminiscence of any deed of courage for America, nor literary success, nor intellect, nor book for the bookshelf. But a few carols vibrating through the air I leave for comrades and lovers.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, he obviously cared about his work, that he wanted to have a book, but I think in essence he's reminding us that what we're doing now and talking and sharing with each other is sort of in essence the books are one thing, but that we keep doing these dialogues and thanks again for having us on.
Of course, we love it.
All right.
So once again, guys, we are celebrating tonight the birthday of Walt Whitman. We're having WALTfest. It's Whitman-tastic and all the rest of that. And stay with us and hear some beautiful, beautiful stuff and a little background on Whitman if you don't know it. And I think we have our first guest come in, one of our wonderful, wonderful regulars here.
Yes, Darrel Ford is a Walt Whitman personator. He's been going around to schools and all over the country, I think, for many, many years. He became just entranced with Whitman at an early age, which he'll tell you more about. Welcome, Darrel. Thanks for being here.
And Mankh, actually, you could actually do me a favor and just hit those two switches up on the wall there.
Okay, please.
Because Darrel and I have been through this before.
Oh.
No, up. There we go. Hi, Darrel. How are you?
It's good to see you again, Mr. Fenn.
And it's wonderful to see you.
Well, I'm still at it, and at 83, I'm still personating Walt, and by that I mean that I'm not Walt, nor do I think that I could ever aspire to be Walt, but I give him a human face and I introduce him to people who are used to concrete images. My reading today is something that he wrote toward the end of his career, and it's not a poem, it's prose. My own involvement with Walt is 77 years I have been. My mother was a Iowa-born schoolmarm, and she loved to read and declaim poetry. I can remember her saying Tennyson's, "For I looked into the future far as human eye could see." And so I early formed the habit of reading poetry, and I have loved it, and I have had a complete lifelong romance with Walt Whitman, and it's an honor to personate him in a great many different venues. I'm a person of use to the Walt Whitman birthplace and to his home for the last 20 years of his life in Camden, New Jersey, across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. And so I've been very busy this time of the year because there are celebrations of Walt's birthday all over the country, and I'm frequently invited.
So obviously, how long have you been doing the personations?
Something on the order of 35 to 40 years. It's one of those things that just gradually evolved from my lifelong interest in Whitman. I'd like to do my reading now, if I may.
Of course.
It is by way of introduction to those who come after me, who will either read Whitman or read their own poetry that is inspired by Whitman, and his Leaves of Grass, which had 9 different editions, each one a different book. The first published in 1855, self-published in Brooklyn, and the last in Camden in 1891-92, just very shortly before he passed away. And here's what he had to say about his life's work. It's called A Backward Glance or Traveled Roads. So here I sit, gossiping in the early candlelight of old age, I and my book casting backward glances over our traveled road. After completing, as it were, the journey, a varied jaunt of years with many halts and gaps of intervals, or some lengthened sea voyage wherein more than once the last hour had apparently arrived and we seemed certainly going down, yet reaching port in a sufficient way through all discomfitures at last. After completing my poems, I am curious to review them in the light of their own, at the time unconscious or mostly conscious intentions, with certain unfoldings of the 30 years they seek to embody. These lines, therefore, will probably blend the weft of first purposes with the speculations and with the warp of that experience afterward, always bringing strange developments. As I nigh my 70, I live largely on memory. I look upon Leaves of Grass, now finished, to the end of its opportunities and powers, as my definitive carte visite to the coming generations of the New World, if I may assume to say so. That I have not gained the acceptance of my own time, but have fallen back on fond dreams of the future, anticipations still as fulfilled or partially fulfilled. The best comfort of the whole business is that unstopped and unwarped by any influence outside the soul within me, I have had my say, entirely my own way, and put it unerringly on record, the value thereof to be decided by time.
Whitman...
I think that's a wonderful farewell and summing up of his life and poetry.
Accepting things to posterity, sending things to posterity, essentially.
Oh, he talked to posterity all the time. In fact, very often now in this graduation period, the poem that includes the words, "And now Voyager," as he addresses the students who are about to embark on their lives.
Beautiful thing. Yeah. Darrel, how can any educators out there or people involved in different types of projects get in touch with you? You have a website or a contact page?
I do. I have both a website and an email, and I live in Babylon, where Walt lived for a time. And actually, I live around the corner, and I sometimes imagine Walt is sauntering down past my house on his way to have a look at the base of a night. I'm in the phone book. My name is Darrel, Darrel Ford, Ford, so you can give me a call. My website is waltwhitmanofli.com, and my email is waltwhitmanofli@aol.com.
Okay, I have
of course,
to tell you.
Of LI stands for of Long Island.
Right, and I just put a picture of Darrel up on our Facebook page right from here, and please, you get a little shot of Darrel. You'll realize you're getting as close to Whitman as you possibly can get. And please get in touch with Darrel if you're looking to put on some type of an event. WaltWhitmanofli.com. And you can contact him directly at waltwhitmanofli@aol.com. And and of course, just hit me or the station on Facebook there, or on the station webpage, and I will certainly put you in touch with Darrel for any events. And Darrel's just a great performer. I have to say that the very first time I met Darrel, which was right here at the station a few years back, I was like, how did Mankh find Whitman here? But
well, there's a funny little story about I'm often in Camden because he spent the last 20 years of his life.
Right.
And I am, by necessity, doomed to portray him as an old man because that's what I am. But I very much like the young Walt, who had embarked on a revolutionary poetry, both as to form and content, in his middle 30s. And that he published in 1855 when he was 36. It is a wonderful thing to be able to be so in touch with Walt. I call myself a Whitmaniac.
Very good. Darrel Ford, thank you so much for joining us here on Finn's Revolution, and it's always great to have you part of this.
Always a pleasure to be involved in a revolution.
Thanks, Darrel.
Yeah, speaking of...
once again, just really quickly, if you want to get in touch with Darrel Ford, go to his website, waltwhitmanofli.com, and you want to book him for an event, you want to see what he's up to, where he is, all these different things, check it out. Mankh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, because Darrel was mentioning the older Whitman is almost always in photos. You see the older Whitman. So the cover of the anthology, I was looking online and found the New York Public Library had this photo, which I bought. You know, you buy something to use it from a library, but they need money too. And it's a picture. It's a picture of Whitman. It's a type of photo, Daguerreau type portrait of Whitman, circa 1853, and I think they call it the Christ likeness. Something sort of beatific about Whitman, and he's got a scruffy beard, and he looks sort of like someone you'd want to meet today at a bar.
Yeah, he's got a very gentle demeanor about him in this photograph.
Yeah.
And this is Mankh is talking about the cover of Primal Sanities, the anthology that he helped put together. Okay, who do we have next, Mankh?
Next up is Mark Donnelly, who's been coming here pretty much every year, and he's a short story writer and also a playwright. Dramatic monologues and short plays, and he's been published in the Long Island Quarterly, Missing Spoke Press, and other journals. Also wanted to mention the Long Islander is a newspaper that Whitman started way back when, and it's still going on.
Yes, it is. That's right, and Whitman. Of course, we'll get into a little of that a little later. Whitman as journalist and things like that. Mark, absolutely wonderful to see you. Mark Donnelly is with us right here, a longtime acquaintance of mine and friend. Mark, how are you?
Good, Finn. Nice to see you.
And it's great to have you in here again.
Thank you.
I think didn't last year we come on 2 different nights?
I think so. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it was a pleasure having you both weeks.
Yeah.
What do we got?
I'm going to read my poem from the anthology, the Primal Sanities anthology, Writing Helps. As you know, and as is described in the poem, I grew up in South Huntington, very close to where Walt Whitman was born. And I did go there as a boy to the house, and I experienced the building of the Walt Whitman Shopping Center.
The mall.
The mall, right. And you'll hear this in the poem. And after that, I want to mention there's an exhibit at New York Public Library, the Research Library, Schwartzman Building, Federico Garcia Lorca, his manuscript, Poet in New York, and he makes mention of Whitman, and I want to make a reference to that.
And another great writer.
Yes.
Well, let me just ask you before you
Sure.
start, when you first, and I know you do reference some of these things in the piece, but when you first went to the Whitman birthplace, was it set up like it is now, or was it a little more a thing by itself, not as organized, shall we say?
Right. It was more kind of a quiet country home. The Poetry Center didn't get built into the late 90s.
Right.
So it was more of a quiet place, and I had the sense as a boy that this is a little unknown landmark off the beaten path. It's actually on what is called Old Walt Whitman Road.
Right.
And it's just west of the actual Route 110.
Right.
Yeah. So it was kind of a quiet place.
Okay. So why don't you read us your piece, Mark?
Okay.
I love this piece.
Thank you. This is called Writing Helps. We came from the city as the potato farms receded. Open fields gave way to a construction site. My time of play in the dirt mounds, holes became big puddles that froze for ice skating. A landscape changing, soon filled with steel girders. a framework for a shopping center that would bear your name, while across the highway, your childhood home remained fixed in time, a main room that doubled for cooking and relaxing, the short beds upstairs I wanted to touch, the precious books on desks and tables. Did your mother and father read to you there by the firelight? Did you play in the grass outside? I tramped through the woods of West Hills near your home, pretending that I, too, had a beard and big hat. In 7th grade, I imitated some of your language for an essay I wrote, What the Flag Means to Me. A partial line still comes to mind. It means the soldiers, the sailors, the stewards. And I officially began my own writing journey. It was in elementary school that I'd first read your words, then studied them more closely in high school. A college friend gave me a copy of Leaves of Grass. I still have it. Years later, I visited your final home on Mickle Street in Camden, New Jersey. I remember a hat resting on a straight-backed wooden chair. In those last years, you were photographed with long white hair and flowing beard, your poetic reputation assured, only to grow much larger in the 20th century. I long for the peace of the grass in your front yard on Long Island. I tried to find it as an adult and not just in childhood memories. How can the boy stay in the man without getting stuck in nostalgia? How can nature soothe amidst the noise of my own clutter and the chaos of the city? Writing helps. Thank you.
I love that piece, Mark.
Thank you. And now what I'd like to do is, again, I referenced, there's an exhibit on Federico Garcia Lorca called Poet in New York. And it's at the New York Public Library, the main research library, Stephen A. Schwartzman building on 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. The exhibit is on through July 20th and includes his manuscript, the original manuscript of A Poet in New York, plus drawings, photographs, letters, and mementos. And I was pleased to come across in their booklet catalog this paragraph that relates very much to what we're talking about tonight. This is a quote from A Poet in New York as the heading for what I'll then read. I, too, walked the streets of Manhattan Island. Now, rubbing shoulders with the crowd, Lorca thought of the poets who had encountered it before him. Quote, no one can imagine just what a New York crowd is like, except perhaps Walt Whitman, who searched it for solitudes, and T.S. Eliot, who squeezes the crowd like a lemon in his poem The Wasteland, extracting wounds, poets, wet hats, and river shades, end quote. One of Lorca's masters, Juan Ramon Jimenez, had wrung poetry from New York in Diary of a Newlywed Poet, 1916, and both men had thought fondly and often of Edgar Allan Poe. A friend remembered Lorca's hopeless attempts to recite Poe's Annabel Lee. One day Lorca walked across the Brooklyn Bridge to meet fellow poet Hart Crane, then working on his long poem The Bridge, 1930. Both men were inspired by Whitman, to whom Lorca wrote an ambitious ode celebrating his vision of male love and his unfulfilled dreams for America. And included in the booklet is a photograph of a page, handwritten, Whitman's I Saw in Louisiana a Live Growing. It's late 1850s manuscript at New York Public Library in the Henry W. and Albert A. Berg collection of English and American Lit. So not only do you get to encounter Lorca at New York Public, but you can actually see this manuscript of Whitman's I Saw in Louisiana a Live Oak Growing.
Naturally, the New York Public Library, along with all the general New York libraries, have wonderful collections, and I was not even aware that the Lorca exhibit was currently going on, and that's something to absolutely check out, those of you who are into the poetry, into a little Lorca, into poets in New York at different times, as a matter of fact. Check it out over at the New York Public Library. Mark, anything else going on in your writing life that we would be interested in at the moment?
Well, I've written a play, a full-length play about Mother Jones, who was an Irish immigrant who became a famous union organizer in the American labor movement in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And I have some interest by a theater group on the Upper West Side, and I'm hoping to hear good news on that.
Well, that should be exciting. You have to keep us posted on that. Maybe we will, when you guys are doing it for the first time, you let us know.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Vin.
you, Mark. Mark, a pleasure as always. Mark Donnelly.
Thanks. Say hello to Allison.
I shall do so. She's listening now, so you just said it. Hi, Mankh. Who's next?
Next up, we have Barbara Ryer-Myers,
Who's also been here before.
Yeah, she's been here before.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello.
She's a wonderful poet in her own right, and anybody who is connected with the Long Island poetry scene is thankful and knows how much Barbara does. She, a bunch of years ago, with the technology, started sending out a weekly email listing all the events on Long Island from Manhattan to Montauk, and people just rely on this. Some Friday nights I'd be sitting around with nothing to do. I'd look, I was like, oh my God, and all of a sudden I'm out the door going to a reading. So Barbara knows a lot about poetry.
And in fact, that just gets busier and busier, I'm sure, right, Barbara?
Yes. There's a really thriving poetry scene on Long Island.
Absolutely.
And the more I hunt, the more I can put in my poetry news.
It's like almost never ending. There's so much poetry.
I'm
out
almost insulted if there's a poetry reading and I don't know about it.
Very good. In fact, Whitman was probably the first guy or one of the first guys to get that all rolling on Long Island big time. So, right?
Yes.
Okay. Barbara, you want to read something for us today?
Yes, I have some Whitman poetry.
Okay.
I hear America singing. The varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his, as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to her and none else. The day, what belongs to the day. At night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. It was so joyful, wasn't it?
So joyful and so observant of human character and nature.
He has a poem about a spider, talking about being observant. Who sits and watches spiders? Only Walt and other poets. A noiseless, patient spider I marked, where, on a little promontory, it stood isolated. Marked how, to explore the vacant, vast surrounding, it launched forth filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. And you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, O my soul.
Beautiful.
I have one short poem that really hit me by Whitman. In fact, the more I read Whitman, the more I like him. Can't say that I liked everything when I first started, but I guess I have matured. There's a note from Edward Hirsch, who is a pretty famous poet, on this poem, And it says, this final poem in the section From Noon to Starry Night in the 7th edition of Leaves of Grass is, in the words of Edward Hirsch, about releasing the soul back into the universe. Hirsch, who has defined a poem as a soul in action through words, connects Whitman's poem with the essay The Poet by Ralph Waldo Emerson, a mentor of Whitman's. Here we find ourselves suddenly not in a critical speculation, but in a holy place, and should go very warily and reverently. So this little poem is A Clear Midnight by Walt Whitman. This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless, away from books, away from art, the day erased, the lesson done, thee fully forth emerging, silent, gazing, pondering the themes thou lovest best, night, sleep, death, and the stars. That was written in 1881. And in 2013, it hit me.
Beautiful, beautiful piece. That's one of the great things about Whitman, and you can find this, there's so much stuff. You find these, just a little couplet somewhere that's just amazing.
Right. I wonder at his wonder.
Right.
And his observance. I don't think he missed a thing.
And in fact, his wonder and curiosity are one of the big, and his interest in expressing that is one of the big charms of reading it.
Right.
So, Barbara, tell us where we can find out those who'd like to be connected to the poetry. What is it? The listserv kind of a deal?
Well, I used to curate a calendar, which is no longer on the internet, but I do send an email.
Okay. How can people get on it?
If they have a pencil or a pen, my email address is REIHERBPOET at optonline.net.
All right. And if they go to this site, if they email you, what will they be receiving?
There'll be what I do. I put on a face page. I put a poem, just like I might put this poem that I just read on the next face page on Monday. Something that strikes me, and I copy and paste it. And then as an attachment, I have maybe 10 or 11 pages of contests, opportunities, events, accomplishments, awards, and so forth of interest to poets.
Very cool. So I'm going to read that back, and Barbara can correct me if I'm wrong. REIHERBPOET at optonline.net.
Correct.
Okay. So if I'll put that up on the station website as well. If you want to contact Barbara and you have a question, you can contact me either via Facebook or via the station website. So Barbara Ryer-Myers, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure as always.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
You're welcome, Mankh. My pleasure.
What do we got next, Mankh? What's going on?
Next up, I want to read a short piece from a good friend and a wonderful poet, Geraldine Green. She lives in Cumbria, England, and she came to visit here. And these are some of her first writing about Whitman.
Okay.
And it's a little part of her longer essay in the book, the Primal Sanities Anthology. It's called Holding Each Other's Hands. I got to know Walt Whitman when I was 27. A photographer friend introduced me to Leaves of Grass. I'd never written poetry before, only kept a journal which I called my Red File for 3 years. He read it and said, "Look, you have that same kind of bounding energy and joy in life and people that Whitman has. So thanks, my friend, for making me acquainted with Walt's poetry." His photo is in front of me here in Cumbria, England. I got it from the Walt Whitman Museum at West Hills in July. He's looking me right in the eye with a kind of jaunty glance, his hand firmly on his hip, knuckles digging into his thigh, hat wide-brimmed on one side, slouching with his hand in his pocket. ready to take out a leaf, pebble, button, a find to give me from his travels. I sat on the porch of his home, where he was born into this world from the birthing bed in the back room, thick twined mattress with a wooden peg that tightens the strings, and from which grew the saying, night, night, sleep tight, watch the bed bugs don't bite. The sleep tight bit is here's hoping the strings have been tightened. So.
Great piece. In a few moments, guys, we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to give away a copy of Primal Sanities in about 10 minutes from now. Signed by one of the editors, I do believe, Mankh, yes?
We can do that. I can do that.
That sounds good. So in a few moments, we're going to give away a copy of this wonderful, wonderful anthology. And you will have your own copy of this little tribute to Walt Whitman right here. But right now we have another reader and poet coming into the room who's been on before. And who do we have?
Chris Nicola. He's a wonderful poet, and he's kind of a younger generation renaissance. He's a musician, does artwork. He hosts a reading over in Patchogue at the Roast Coffee place. I forget the whole name. Roast Coffee and Roast Coffee and Tea.
Company.
Yeah. And so Chris is going to share some of Whitman and also read a poem from the anthology from someone who's not here tonight.
Hi, Chris. Where is that poetry reading in Patchogue?
It's at the Roast Coffee and Tea Trading Company. That's located on Main Street in Patchogue. It's just a few stores away from the Patchogue Theater.
Sure.
Wonderful little coffee shop.
What nights do you have? When do you do these?
It's the first Saturday of every month.
Okay, very
always
cool.
host
About
that.
what time? Like,
We roughly started around, we have a meet and greet around 7:30, and we roughly start the reading around 8:30, roughly around.
okay, so about 7:30 the event actually begins. Very cool. Okay, what are you going to read for us, Chris?
I got a Walt Whitman collection here from 1855. It's a piece called There Was a Child Went Forth. There was a child went forth every day, and the first object he looked upon, that object he became, and that object became part of him for the day, or a certain part of the day, or for many years, or stretching cycles of years. The early lilacs became part of this child, and grass, and white and red morning glories, and white and red clover, and the song of the phoebe bird, and the third month lambs, and the sows pink faint litter, and the mare's foal, and the cow's calf, and the noisy brood of the barnyard, or by the mire of the pond side, and the fish suspending themselves so curiously below there, and the beautiful curious liquid, and the water plants with their graceful flat heads, all became part of him. The field sprouts of 4th month and 5th month became part of him. Winter grain sprouts, and those of the light yellow corn, and the esculent roots of the garden, and the apple trees covered with blossoms, and the fruit afterward, and woodberries, and the commonest weeds by the road, and the old drunkard staggering home from the outhouse of the tavern, whence he had lately risen, and the schoolmistress that passed on her way to the school, and the friendly boys that passed, and the quarrelsome boys, and the tidy and fresh-cheeked girls, and the barefoot boy and girl, and all the changes of city and country wherever he went. His own parents, he that fathered him, and she that had conceived him in her womb, and birthed him. They gave this child more of themselves than that. They gave him afterward every day. They became part of him. The mother at home quietly placing the dishes on the supper table. The mother, with mild words, clean her cap and gown, a wholesome odor falling off her person and clothes as she walks by. The father, strong, self-sufficient, manly, mean, angered, unjust. The blow, the quick loud word, the tight bargain, the crafty lure, the family usages, the language, the company, the furniture, the yearning and swelling heart, affection that will not be gainsayed, the sense of what is real The thought, if after all it should prove unreal, the doubts of daytime and the doubts of nighttime, the curious whether and how, whether that which appears so is so, or is it all flashes and specks? Men and women crowding fast in the streets, if they are not flashes and specks, what are they? The streets themselves and the facades of houses and goods in the windows, vehicles, teams, the heavy planked wharves, the huge crossing at the ferries, the village on the highland seen from afar at sunset, the river between, shadows, aureola and mist, the light falling on roofs and gables of white or brown 2 miles off, the schooner nearby sleepily dropping down the tide, the little boat slack-towed astern, the hurrying, tumbling waves, quick broken crests slapping, the strata of colored clouds, the long bar of maroon tint away solitary by itself, the spread of purity it lies motionless in, the horizon's edge, the flying sea crow, the fragrance of salt marsh and shore mud. These became part of the child who went forth every day and who now goes and will always go forth every day.
Beautiful piece, Chris. One of the things about Whitman, I think, is that many people just associate him as like kind of pastoral and country, and they really don't. You know, when you read a little more into him and you read a bunch of him, you really realize he's all encompassing. I mean, here we were traveling through the city. You know, all those great observations. It's all part of the human experience to Whitman, and he's not some kind of relegated poet. Only because I think a lot of people, just with the title alone, quite frankly, "Leaves of Grass," you know, of the major work, people tend to niche him into a certain kind of pastoral poet. But he's certainly not that. He's all encompassing.
Absolutely.
What else did you want to read for us, Chris?
I want to read a piece from the Primal Sanities anthology, which is a tribute to Whitman. This one is written by one of my favorite Long Island poets, Barbara Southard. This one is titled "Stranded at the Walt Whitman Mall." I was distracted, passed my station, got off the train at an unfamiliar destination, caught a bus back to an approximate location, that much closer to my intended goal. I was shivering, tired, hungry, perplexed. Directly in front of me, my eye caught some text. Oh cruel, oh helpless soul of me. What perfection, what harmony. A poet's words carved in stone, blazoned on the wall outside the Walt Whitman Mall. Rise up, fellow poets. Write poems along paths, at bus stops, in junkyards, on stones and bleached bones. Show up in store windows, outside barbershop doors. Cavalcade through the streets of our towns.
And that of course is one of the great, often unnoticed items on Long Island is the Walt Whitman Mall, which of course has those great lines of poetry on the outside of it. Have you been to the mall yourself, Chris?
Not in a long, long time.
Yeah, nor have I. But I've seen pictures of the more recent developments there, and it's actually quite. It's not something just tucked away, you know. There's the poetry's all right on the outside walls, and it's a beautiful thing. And you know, for those who pass by on their shopping sprees or whatever they may be doing, our consumerist society here, we at least can take some solace in some of the words on the wall.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. Now, how's your band doing? You still in a band?
I've always been more of a solo artist. I sometimes will collaborate amongst friends for my recordings, which I always enjoy doing. I just last night actually completed the mixing for my second album.
Okay, yeah, we played something from the first album last time you were here. Okay. Well, congratulations on that. How can people find out more about your recording career?
I have a SoundCloud account. People can go on soundcloud.com. Under the search, type in Chris Nicola Music. You'll be able to find my page, and there's a several selection of my compositions recorded there. And very shortly, once the album is mastered to its complete form, it will. Some of the selections will be on the site as well.
Okay, cool. So it's Chris, as in Chris, Nicola, Nicola, music.com on SoundCloud, right? So they go to SoundCloud, they do the search for you, and they should be able to find it.
That is correct.
Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you as always.
You as well.
Hey, Mankh, how are you?
All right, doing well. It's fun to hear other people read different voices of reading Whitman.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, you just read a Barbara Southard piece who's been here before, and really, really good stuff.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue because our next poet is Primilla Venkateswaran. And she, first I have to say, she's the new Suffolk County Poet Laureate.
Congratulations, Primilla.
Thank you.
And there were submissions, and a lot of people were submitting poems about, how awful. The commercialism is one thing, but how Whitman would it was like a sin that they made a mall. But her poem. Maybe you can read that first. Yeah, it was that it shows how Whitman appreciated everything: body, mind, spirit. He was spiritual, but also celebrated the physical. So that's
exactly.
Her poem is a good segue for that.
And let me ask you, Primilla, what is the process? Because it's probably a bit of a mystery to most of us. How do people become the Poet Laureate of Suffolk County? What's the process?
It's sort of something I'm mystified about too. I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly.
Do you apply? Does somebody nominate you? What happens?
Yeah, I guess a bunch of people nominate. They have names and then they pick one.
Okay.
And then they ask.
Do you have any idea if were you asked anything about your criteria for the position or what?
No, I have no idea. It's all a mystery to me.
I love it, and that's how Poet Laureate positions should be, I think. A mystery. Right?
A mystery.
Well, congratulations, Primilla.
Thank you.
What are you going to read for us?
So, as Mankh was saying, that the question in people's minds is that would Walt have really appreciated the Walt Whitman Mall, a mall being named after him? And I was thinking about that actually, and that's how this poem came about. It's called The Material Poet. Walt, you materialist, rolling naked in the tall grasses of Long Island, rejoicing that a mall is named after you. It's razzle-dazzle, it's silks, cottons, wood, foam, wax, granite, fluff, metal, glass, the relaxer beds and massage chairs, wonder bras and plunge necklines. These things of the earth, shaped by the mind and cast back in the mall, behind glass and luminous walls, to excite, nature recast by human urge, to recreate, break, renew. Home, resort, bridge, garden, school, borough, or award could bear your name and you would be cool about it. For these are the things of the world within which beat human hearts, whose rhythms you listened to, and joy rose to your lips and eyes. How you believed in the world as fruit. If we believed only the seed mattered and threw out the flesh, the fruit would lose its name. So,
beautiful, beautiful. And then, of course, it's all about everything being relevant and everything being. It's like the Ginsberg poem. What is the poem? Holy, holy, holy.
You mean the Howl poem?
Well, no,
the other one.
I think it's the Malach section of that.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, right.
Yeah, where
right.
everything is holy.
Right,
and,
exactly.
That's exactly it.
Exactly. So with Walt, it's everything is, you observe everything and you celebrate everything.
Right.
So it's observation, celebration.
And you put it much better than I did.
And one of the poems that I've always been fascinated by is Song of Myself. And here there is a section in Song of Myself, it's section number 5, which has always fascinated me. I believe in you, my soul. The other I am must not abase itself to you, and you must not be abased to the other. Loaf with me on the grass, loose the stop from your throat. Not words, not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best, only the lull I like, the hum of your valved voice. I mind how once we lay such a transparent summer morning, how you settled your head athwart my hips and gently turned over upon me and parted the shirt from my bosom bone and plunged your tongue into my bare stripped heart and reached till you felt my beard and reached till you held my feet. Swiftly arose and spread around me the peace and knowledge that pass all the argument of the earth. And I know that the hand of God is a promise of my own, and I know that the Spirit of God is a brother of my own, and that all the men ever born are also my brothers, and the women my sisters and lovers, and that a kelson of the creation is love, and limitless are leaves stiff or drooping in the fields, and brown ants in the little wells beneath them, and mossy scabs of the worm fence, heaped stones, elder, mullein, and pokeweed. And what's fascinating about this section is this deep connection to the soul, which is described in very erotic language.
Yes.
And he doesn't shy away from eroticism. And the erotic is something that comes very close with anything that you would call sublime.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. His imagery is always beautiful.
Right.
Most beautiful.
So he's describing this deep connection that he has, with the soul. So even the word like loaf with me on the grass.
Exactly. It's all very sensual.
Very sensual. Yes.
Primilla, before we do another little piece, I'm just curious. How can people find out more about? Are you like? Is there a link now on the Suffolk County webpage? I'm serious. Is there one?
I have no idea.
Okay. Probably is.
I'm probably a poet laureate that nobody knows about.
Oh no. Well, they will. They will.
But I do have a website that people can look at.
Okay. What is that?
If they want to know more
Sure,
about my work.
What is it?
It's Primilla V.
Oh, you made it simple for us, huh?
PRAMILAV.yolasite.com.
Okay. Primilla V, that's PRAMILAV at .yolasite.com.
That's right.
Very good. And that's easy to find.
Yeah.
So you want to read one more piece for us?
Yeah, sure. This is again another section from Song of Myself, and this is section number 6. And this is just a short part of that section because that section is quite long. I will make the poems of materials, for I think they are to be the most spiritual poems. And I will make the poems of my body and of mortality, for I think I shall then supply myself with the poems of my soul and of immortality. So it is that first line that really I feel totally with. I will make the poems of materials. So Walt Whitman was wonderful because he did not shy away from the material world. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say, forget about the material, you just have to transcend. No, not at all. He was very much engaged with the material world.
And in fact, he wrote poems, as we were just discussing with Chris before, not only about the pastoral,
right,
but also about the urban, the visceral, all those things.
Totally.
Yeah.
So which means that he could write about the grass.
Right.
He can write about the slave, man or woman.
The war.
Mm-hmm. So he went everywhere. He could write about anything and everything. So he enjoyed in the fact that he could observe, celebrate, and write. So I mean that's what I get out of most of his poems. It's that ability to observe, to
right.
notice,
and
pay
not
attention to.
And also not be judgmental about what he notices.
Exactly.
Take it all in and express it.
Exactly. And the other thing is the deep sense of brotherhood and that he felt with everybody. So he felt very connected. Like here is a line that says, I will sing the song of companionship. I will show what alone must finally compact these. I believe these are to be found, their own ideal of manly love indicating it in me. I will therefore let a flame from me the burning fires that were threatening to consume me. I will lift what has too long kept down those smoldering fires, and so on and so forth. But the idea that I will sing the song of companionship, and that's something that's very relevant for our times, where I think we all need to have that sense of, I'm deeply connected to the other person.
And that's something, for example, and this is just my little statement here, you may agree, that many governments, many powers that be, shall we say, are attempting to separate us from.
Exactly. So especially in our modern times when we feel that sense of alienation, I think Walt Whitman really comes to our aid by reminding us that, we have this ability to have that sense of companionship with other people. And so that reminder is something that we can sort of take with us.
Absolutely. Primilla, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And congratulations on your position as Poet Laureate, whatever that means, of Suffolk County.
Thank you. It's been wonderful being here and talking about Walt Whitman.
And it's great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Primilla.
Bye-bye.
I think we're going to make a call in a minute, right?
That's 8:15ish.
Oh, okay, 8:15ish. How about we give away a book now, though?
That
Real
sounds
quick?
good. Yeah, before I forget, though, I want another good segue, because that's my favorite word tonight, is the segue, because you're talking about companionship, and Whitman was essential for helping to, of all the poets I know of America, respect the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples.
Yes.
He used the Indian native word for Manhattan, Mannahatta, in his poems, and Paumanok, another word that he has poems starting from Paumanok. Mm-hmm. Another name is Sewan Haki, so I wanted to throw that in there, too.
Absolutely.
Let's give away a book.
Yeah, let's give away a book. Going to give us a call right now. You're going to get a copy of, I stole a Monkh's copy here, actually, of Primal Sanities, edited by Mankh and George Wallace. George Wallace, former Poet Laureate of Suffolk County. Just a brilliant, beautiful anthology, tribute to Walt Whitman. If you're enjoying this program right now, you can give us a call at 631-632-6901. That's 631-632-6901. We will mail you out a signed copy of this book, 631-632-6901. We're going to listen to a little tune while you are dialing, 631-632-6901, and we'll be right back on the air. Yeah, that's Abby Venkateswaran right here on WUSB Stony Brook doing the song Walt Whitman. Of course, what else could it possibly be? And congratulations to our book winners for now. We're going to give away some more later. Stephen from West Islip and John from Center Moriches. And we are WUSB Stony Brook, and my name is Finn, and this show is called Finn's Revolution. And we are celebrating the lifetime's poetry influence of Mr. Walt Whitman, the Bard of West Hills. And we're here with, as we do on a pretty much yearly basis, with our good friend Mankh. Mankh, how are you?
Good, thanks, Finn.
And thanks for being here for the second hour here. And in a little while, we're going to give away some more copies of Primal Sanities, which is this great, great anthology that you and former Poet Laureate of Suffolk County, George Wallace, great, great poet, great, great guy, edited, and it's just a marvelous, marvelous thing. Let me just ask you quickly before we get to our next reader, how do we come up with the title Primal Sanities for the anthology, Mankh?
That is, I have a bookmark. Let's see if I can find it quick. It's a line from Whitman, his poem, Give Me the Splendid Silent Sun, which the first part is, like you were talking with Primilla, is all about nature and the beauty of, it starts off, give me the splendid silent sun with all his beams full dazzling. Give me juicy autumnal fruit, ripe and red from the orchard. And then the second half is actually about the city. It's like, keep your splendid silent sun, keep your woods, O nature. Give me faces and streets. And so it really shows the balance of Whitman. And then there is a line, give me to warble spontaneous songs, recluse by myself, for my own ears only. Give me solitude, give me nature, give me again, O nature, your primal sanities. So I've loved that line for many, many, many years, and
Yeah, me
especially
too. It's
with all
beautiful.
that's going on in the world. And it reminds that there was a time where there was sanity.
Well, I don't know if there ever really was,
And we
but
want it. But there's some kind of primal,
there's something
sanity that we can connect with. And
exactly
that's,
right.
So,
Exactly
and
right.
it's exclamation point. I actually had some people tell me, not to put the no book title has an exclamation point. And I was like, but that's what Whitman put, and that's what's going in.
Bingo. So who do we have next?
Next up is Ginger Williams, another fine poet in her own right, and she's going to read several wonderful poets in the anthology. And also, I'm not sure if it was the reading, she hosts a reading, the Euterpe Poetry Group at the Emma Clark Library. I'm not sure if it was that reading where we met Finn at the library.
We may have met at that library. That's my a beautiful, beautiful library right here in Setauket. If you do not patronize it and you live in the area, you're a fool. You should patronize it. It's a great, great library. Yeah, we'll go over all that. But yeah, we did meet, I do believe, at MS Clark, which used to be my home library since I've moved since that time. And great, great event. And if that was it was a wonderful event.
So welcome, Ginger.
So Ginger, welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Just like that is good. Just like
Okay.
that is good. So, first of all, you're a poet yourself.
That's true.
Okay. And how did you come to Whitman?
How did I come to Whitman? I know exactly how. I am a school teacher, a former school teacher. I'm retired now.
Where did you teach? What district?
I taught at Three Village Schools,
Okay.
Arrowhead School.
Sure.
And
I went to Arrowhead School.
you did?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Long before you were a teacher, probably. But go ahead.
Maybe not. I was there for quite a while. Anyway, one of the things I did at Arrowhead Schools, I ran a young authors club for kids. And another thing that I did is I exposed them to some Whitman. But the Whitman Place has a contest for anthologies and single poems and so forth.
Okay.
And so every year I would go into 3 or 4 different classrooms and I would have them do anthologies. And the anthologies would go to the Whitman birthplace, and lots of times they'd win. And then there'd be a very special day where there was a festival and all the kids were there. And so when I was teaching it to the kids, it took me right into the heart of Whitman. And so now I teach kids at the Walt Whitman birthplace.
Oh, that's wonderful and exciting.
And I also design the children's contest,
Okay, very nice.
which we just had yesterday, Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many cool events happening over at the birthplace over there. It's a great little center. You know,
Really is.
it is. So what are you going to read for us today, Ginger?
Well, I thought I would read. Mankh mentioned Euterpe, but we also, my friend Gladys Henderson and I also co-host a reading at Barnes & Noble. And I'd like to read Gladys Henderson's poem,
And which Barnes & Noble do you co-host the reading at?
Smithtown Mall.
Okay. The Smith Haven Mall, you mean?
Smith Haven Mall, yeah.
Right.
And it's the second Thursday starting at 7 o'clock.
Second
month.
Thursday of the month. Okay.
Whitman's photograph speaks. All the way down Atlantic Avenue, I pressed the record key until the turn at Flatbush made my way up the parking ramps, reeking of the poor living in its wells. I was one of the endless stream of commuters driving Brooklyn streets, while the morning sun cut through the clotted air, a ghetto of open lesions bandaged with sunlight, a grief I escaped each evening like a bat from a burial cave. Families living in cardboard boxes, blood stains on corners. I locked the car doors before the traffic lights. The homeless waited to clean windshields with their spit, $1 the price to pass. There were men in wheelchairs rolling down Atlantic Avenue, calloused palms begging at car windows, street oil anointing their hands. Just like you, I recorded what I saw, backdrops of a city with broken windows, so many windows. They covered them with fake fresco paintings of flower pots, cats sitting on the sills. This, our America, passing its cup of streetlights, begging at car windows, soiled rags and spit to clean windshields. the shattered sleeping beneath the New York Times. I grasped death on those mornings, allowing it to enter, took the gauze from my tongue, felt the rawness of my teeth as I tried to speak, but was already in the grave, and the voice speaking was yours. From the photograph above my desk, you looked at me. I heard you call my name and stumbled out to meet you, rattling death from my body. Gladys L. Henderson.
Which is a beautiful piece. That's one of my favorites in the anthology as well.
So we got another poet laureate of Nassau County. His name is Maxwell Cordion Wheat, Jr., and the poem is called Oh, how shall I warble myself for the dead one I loved? Walt Whitman, from When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed. America's carol of morning, thrush's flute song from pond and Long Island pine barrens, from alcove of pine and white cedar. I walked the barrens, Whitman knew. Think of framed photograph on my living room mantel. My mother, her brown hair bobbed over her forehead. She looks down on child in her lap, her softness pressed against my back. 32 years she had. I hiked a pond, banked with high bush blueberry, listened for poet, for singer. In this cloister, the hermit's long, loud, liquid, clear prelude, then high splintering as if peaches from ecclesiastical glass. Maxwell Cordion Wheat. And there's a little poet's note from the poet. I heard the hermit thrush sing from bushes by a pond in the Long Island pine barrens on a spring night when Venus was showering over the western horizon, as Walt Whitman saw the planet over our nation's capital that April of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Writing a feature story about this for Newsday, I asked Lorna Salzman, environmentalist, and her husband Eric Salzman, musician, author of articles Sweet Singer of the Pine Barrens, about the hermit thrush. Terra Nova, Nature and Culture, summer 1997. If they could guide me to a pond where I could hear this song, which F. Schuyler Matthews in his book, Field Book of Wild Birds and Their Music, G.P. Putnam, New York, writes of the wonderful way the singer delivers his sustained tonic and then embroiders it with a rapid and brilliant cadenza. This is the song Whitman presents as the refrain each time in different words in his long and lovely poem, mourning the death of Abraham Lincoln, When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed.
Wow, that's a beautiful reference to that poem. Really nice.
Got one more?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this poet will be turning 90 this year, and she's still churning out books and enthusiasm and all kinds of cool stuff. And her name is Muriel Harris Weinstein. It's called Ode to a Dandelion. And the epigraph is, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. Walt Whitman. The ordinary dandelion, a weed throughout the world, plucked with annoyance, even distemper, by landscapers, lovers of perfection. Rising on milky hollow stems, golden flowers brighten the day, and when they dry, a second life, a white puffball forms. Soft, globular dome, reminiscent of mounds that hold back the ocean's summer tide to protect a child's sandcastle from crumbling. Mounds whose circumference is the minute reincarnation of mountains. Mounds of radiance, its head a globe of white light, light trapped between hair like threads, light filling the fluffy ends, each one in perfect symmetry, each a broomy floweret forming a circle of breath, yet steadfast, and with such force, the silken stems remain intact when blown upon their fluffy ends ruffle and ribbon. When turned over, their silken struts defy the network of steel cables crisscrossing to build a framework for bridges. These silk strands, the journey work of stars, of God, of evolution, in its most clever phase. This flower, this weed, this marble of beauty starts a wondering about reincarnation, migration from yellow blossom to white fluffy dome. When enough days have passed and winds wahool, the broomy stuff will sail off, leaving silken stems like ribs on toy paper umbrellas. Gone their canopy, gone the flowerets, floating on air's currents like floating fairies, like magical totems, too light to be caught, too airy to be held, too beautiful to last, but oh, how it engraves itself in the heart. Muriel Harris Weinstein.
Absolutely beautiful and poignant.
Yeah.
Ginger, thank you so much for joining us.
Well,
Ginger, so you're over at the Walt Whitman birthplace over there at certain times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you, okay. What is the actual website for the Walt Whitman birthplace? Do you recall?
Nope.
None of us
I
recall.
think it's WWBA something, like if you search.
Well,
Walt
the bottom
Whitman
line, I'm pretty sure if we can find the Walt Whitman birthplace and you just Google it,
Association, I think.
You can go, you can go to Walt Whitman
Yeah.
birthplace
You will
on
find-
the Google, and it'll give you the information.
you will find yourself
Yeah.
right there. And there's tons and tons of great events happening there on a regular basis. It's just a great place to visit. It's just for like the kids, but it's great, for anybody. And adults to go, it's fantastic. It's a very, it really maintains a lot of that sense that it originally had, as Mark Donnelly was discussing with us earlier, that he had when he was going there as a child. That sense of quiet space, etc. And it's just a beautiful thing, and we're lucky to have it. Thanks, Ginger.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to play a quick little tune here, under a minute, while we contact one of our favorites, Mindy Kronenberg, right here on the phone. So, and then I guess in about 15 minutes, we're going to give away another couple of books. So stay tuned for that. We're going to take a 1-minute break here while we cue up that phone. Oh man, I'm telling you, a little Whitman poems put to music right there by Mr. Ives. Just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Mankh, we have another guest on the line right now. And by the way, we are going to give away a couple more copies of Primal Sanities in about 15 minutes time, so stay tuned for that. But Mankh, why don't you introduce our next guest?
Yeah, Mindy Kronenberg. I think this is the first year we've called a poet to be on the air. She couldn't make it here.
Poetsoncall.com, we call it.
Mindy is a mentor and director of academic support at SUNY Empire State College. She edits Bookmark Quarterly Review, which is a rare thing to have, first of all, book reviews nowadays. And also she does an amazing service to represent small presses. So we are very thankful to her for doing that. And she's also a trustee for the Miller Place Historical Society, as long as her bio is still up to date. So I don't know. I hope so.
Mindy, thank you so much for joining us here on Finn's Revolution. It's we don't get to see you this time, but we're talking to you, and that's great.
Yeah, this is the next best thing. I know we do this once a year, and I can't be down in your wonderful studio with all of you wonderful people, but you got me through technology.
That's right. Well, I don't know if it's really technology, but it's something. So, Mindy, so what's new with you? How's everything going at Bookmark Quarterly?
Everything is going very busy. Speaking of Bookmark, and thank you, Mankh, for that mention. Bookmark is going to be down at the Council of Literary Magazines and Presses Magazine Fair this coming weekend. at the Housing Works the Housing Works Bookstore and Cafe, which is 126 Crosby Street in Soho. And they bring down a great collection of small press editors and publishers, and they have all their magazines and books for sale for $2 a piece to raise money for the homeless with AIDS. And I'm going to be one of the editors who's going to be down there with copies of Bookmark to talk to the public, answer questions, collect books for review, and all that good stuff.
Well, that's exciting. Is there a website for that before we get into a reading?
You can go to the Housing Works Bookstore and Cafe website, or the CLMP, which is Council of Literary Magazines and Presses, and they will have information about the magazine weekend.
Fantastic. Let me ask you, Mindy. I don't know if I ever asked you this question before, but what brought you to Whitman? What was your first? Do you recall some moment where you're like Whitman is just amazing?
You know, he was probably brought to me, or I found him on my parents' shelves. I was really lucky that I grew up in a household without censorship and with tons of books in art. You know, we didn't have much, but we had the written word, and we had things of beauty in the forms of books on art and art replica. And my parents always read to each other. They read Whitman to each other. They read Shakespeare to each other. So I might have heard this in utero, and they definitely had it on their shelves. And I think maybe as a child and as a young reader, I must have been fascinated and in awe at this expansive verse that embraced the universe. And, of course, I read him in school, and I think, like with most things, you know, as we mature, we gain a better understanding and appreciation of those pieces of literary legacy that we were taught on one level when we're going to school, and then we start to appreciate how profound they are. So probably early exposure just from having the books available to me on the shelf, and then doing my own investigation, thankfully. And then, of course, being a part of the burgeoning poetry community on Long Island, which includes people like Mankh, who is very devoted to Whitman, who put together Primal Sanities, which is a terrific homage to Whitman from many of the local poets. And, of course, the Walt Whitman birthplace, which I think you mentioned earlier on the show. Like a lot of poets, I have read there, and I've become more familiar with Walt's work and information about his life and his influence. So he's really everywhere. He's a global phenomenon, as a matter of fact. His poems have been translated into numerous languages because I think he speaks for humanity.
Absolutely, Ben. And just to go back on just something you said just a second ago, I think we would all here agree, and I think most of you out there listening would agree, that there's nothing better you can do than read to your children at a very young age. And, especially some of the great stuff that's out there, including Whitman. Just the love of language is something to instill early on, I think, and it can only benefit your child.
Yes, and to see the beauty in language and accept the messages that are given to us and not be judgmental. But he's the father of modern poetry, and there is so much in his work that we really need to take our time and go through it and relish it and savor it and return to it, because I think that's where we fully gain understanding and appreciation of the things that he tells us in his work, and as we grow to understand better and better as we grow older and go through the world.
Yes, it's exactly correct. So you're going to read something for us, Mindy. What would you like to read?
Sure. I'd like to start with this, and you forgive me, I haven't heard the entire show because I've been teaching tonight, and my class ended at 8 o'clock.
That's a good excuse,
I had
Mindy.
a poetry class tonight.
That's a good excuse, Mindy.
Yes, it is a good excuse, poetry and healing, and I told some of my students about the broadcast, so hopefully they're in their cars driving home listening.
Very good.
So I don't know everything that was read before, but I would like to read part of Song of Myself, Section 2, Stanza 2.
Okay.
The smoke of my own breath is how this begins. Everything he writes is like a verse in the Bible, so I almost feel like I need repetition and people reading to me after I read each line. The smoke of my own breath echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore, and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets, or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself.
Wow. Very beautiful.
It's breathless. He has the breathless line and breathless revelation. It's really quite amazing.
It is quite amazing. Wow. Okay, deep breath. And what's next?
Let's see. What is next? Indeed, it's so hard to pick. I kind of like this. This is short, and I actually went to the Walt Whitman archives online. They have a lot of interesting things there, and manuscripts written in hand, pieces of things that were published or intended to be published. And this is a small piece that was actually published as one of what was known as the messenger leaves in the 1860 edition of Leaves of Grass. It was later retitled To the States, but it was called here Walt Whitman's Caution, and I think it speaks to us today. To the states, or any one of them, or any city of the states, resist much, obey little. One unquestioning obedience, once fully enslaved, no nation, race, city of this earth, ever afterward resumes its liberty.
There's a little theme for the Occupy movement right there.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Resist much and obey little.
Resist much and obey little.
I love
that. Maverick.
Exactly right.
That Maverick. Should I continue?
Please do, yeah.
I kind of like this. This is a little different. Are you the new person drawn toward me? Are you the new person drawn toward me? To begin with, take warning. I am surely far different from what you suppose. Do you suppose you will find in me your ideal? Do you think it's so easy to have me become your lover? Do you think the friendship of me would be unalloyed satisfaction? Do you think I am trusty and faithful? Do you see no further than this facade, this smooth and tolerant manner of me? Do you suppose yourself advancing on real ground toward a real heroic man? Have you no thought, O dreamer, that it may be all illusion?
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes, really. He gets almost mystical, and he knows how to deal with illusions, perceptions, revelations, reveries, in true poetic indulgence.
Yes, that's a perfect description. Yeah, Whitman, just as we've been discussing over the course of this particular night, very often Whitman is pegged kind of as specifically a pastoral style poet, because Leaves of Grass alone, just the title, takes you in that direction. But someone in complete touch with the human spirit on every level, whether it be the visceral, the urban style environment or conflicts, the war poems, all these beautiful things, in addition to the beautiful, poignant and pastoral.
And I think important to mention, and we talked about this in class tonight, over everything, over the beauty, over the visceral, over the recognition of things, marvelous and not so marvelous, there's always the genuine.
Yes.
Always the genuine, and he's always human. His love for things is larger than life, but he is doing this as a human being, and his humanity, I think, is something that's threaded through and comes through his voice and his message and his storytelling.
Absolutely. Did you want to read your piece from the anthology or no?
I did, and I just want to read this little tiny piece.
Oh, yeah, sure.
From Leaves of Grass that inspired the poem that I wrote that's in Mankh's marvelous anthology, Primal Sanities.
Beautiful.
It was number 30 and starts, "All truths wait in all things. They neither hasten their own delivery nor resist it. They do not need the obstetric forceps of the surgeon. The insignificant is as big to me as any. What is less or more than a touch? Logic and sermons never convince. The damp of the night drives deeper into my soul." So this is my homage to Walt Whitman. In all things. All truths wait in all things. Holding your weathered covers in my hand, I await the greatness that arises from words. A handful of beads broken from their leash, sprawled on the page to glitter in my sight. How you unraveled the benediction of the damp in the night, what surges and seethes beneath conventional speech. I collect your words like shells sprawled on a deserted beach, coins fallen from pockets to clatter on stone. I follow their pattern like leaves strewn on a furry lawn, the small pointed palms and stems caught mid-dance on the blades. I followed the footprints in sand and grass, witnessed the beautiful bathing young men, the curious spinster, the pensive old soldier, the black horseman resting his reins in the shade. I feel the swell and sway of your voice and the raucous chatter of birds, the wood drake and the mockingbird, the goose and the wood duck, rousing the winged spirit from within. Even in those moments when the world's pockets seemed empty and bereft of gifts, I held your tattered text in my hands, opened the split binding to wherever the heft of pages found me, and knew in the alchemy of your poems I would find all things, my private treasure, and I would never feel alone.
Wow. That's a beautiful piece, and of course you've been here before in person, and I can actually see you with your beaten up old volume of Leaves of Grass in front of you as we speak. Which is encompassed and referenced in that poem, and
I'll tell you something. It's even in worse shape now. I was showing it to a student earlier, and there's more tape on it, and there are more Post-it notes sticking out of it, and the pages are more yellowed than ever. And I've never loved a book so much.
That's wonderful. Mindy, thank you so much for joining us on Finn's Revolution and helping us celebrate, even if it's only by phone, Mindy.
Well, it's my pleasure, and like I said, I'm so glad I was able to do this. And as we say, next year in person.
Thank you, Mindy. Mankh, you want to say a word for Mindy there?
Oh, thank you so much, Mindy. That's starting perhaps a new tradition of at least one Call the Poet.
That's right. Mindy,
thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Okay, Mankh. Wow, another spectacular evening of stuff, right? Some great readers.
So many.
We may have all call-ins from this point forward. I don't know what we'll do in the future. We're going into the. We're entering the latter half of the 20th century, I believe, with our current technology. Phones. Did you want to read something else for us?
If there's time,
Absolutely.
Ginger asked me to read one poem by a dear friend who, Jeanette Klemczewski. She passed away just about a couple of years ago. And then I have one if there's time.
Absolutely.
All right. This is by Jeanette Klemczewski.
And we do want to give away a couple more books, so we want to leave some time for that.
Yeah, she was. I still co-host a reading at the Sachem Library in Holbrook on the last Tuesday of every month, and Jeanette was my co-host for a whole bunch of years and a dear friend. And this is her poem. It's in 2 sections, and you'll see why. It's called Visiting with Walt. 1. Walking through fields rich with clover, where cows grazed on sweet moist straw, with child raw courage and chilled flesh, I came to your door but did not knock. Unguarded, laden with dried weeds and debris gathered from walnut trees, I entered your empty house and drew a fresh fire in the chalk ash broken brick hearth. Bursting flames and earth odor smoke filled the room, casting accordion shadows, caressing, filling the void with solace. Black shadows alive, dancing on aged walls. I talked to you, crawling into your words, and in my loneliness the flames whispered your poems. Rising, breaking flames silently regained power, and the fire licked the air, popping and hissing. Your secrets escaped. I knew yours and told you mine, and the smell of mildew fell deftly into the clover from the flowering fields, where cows pastured and cast their eyes knowingly. 2. A half-century has passed, and I visit your house again. The fields of clover, the walnut trees, now gone. I find myself in the fireplace room where you burned thoughts and poems. The walls are painted white, covering old scars. I remember the fire flames, the long black shadows. The shadows now play gray against white walls. Working with words, my anguish matches yours. The fire hisses, weary, igniting combusted gases. The smell of clover and smoke, of walnut warms, and your words live on, carefully placed on pads of dreams and dignified disguise. In a room lined with seeking worshippers who stand in front of the closed fireplace, I hear their stories, but listen for echoes of so long ago. I think that was about her visiting the Walt Whitman. Adjacent to the birthplace center is the original home.
Right.
So.
Yes, and once again, a place I strongly encourage. We strongly encourage you to visit. It really does. And it's pretty amazing because it's just adjacent to 110 going north and south there, and on Old Walt Whitman Road. But it's a little pastoral spot, and that they kind of maintain pretty well. It's really beautiful.
I think they do keep up the lilacs bushes because of his famous poem in Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloom.
Exactly correct.
They made his poem incorrect. That's a serious, sad poem, but...
Yes, it is.
So.
But and it's just a great place to be, and we encourage you to certainly visit it, not just around Whitman's birthday time, but any time. And it's great for kids. And if you're a teacher out there and you haven't taken your kids, and this is kids, we're not talking just little guys to give them the experience. High school kids, literature classes, the whole deal. It's a great trip, and they have some great events. So just Google it, Walt Whitman Birthplace, and you'll get plenty more information. Now, Mankh, you've periodically you put out all kinds of stuff. You run your own little publishing company, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and in my hand here, I have a thing that is very reminiscent in title from Whitman. As far as where it is located?
Yeah, it's a chapbook. It's like one long poem of about 20 pages in a small book, and it was walking through Central Park one day, and it's very stream of consciousness, with Whitman-esque, and honoring Whitman by saying Central Park Mannahatta, and it's called Arise and Bow Down to All Nations.
And it's quite a beautiful quite a beautiful little package here on it, and it's a little chapbook, but it's very uniquely designed. Some beautiful shots inside, and very well put together. It's really cool.
Thank you very much.
And as are all the things that you do. And where can people get a hold of this?
That's on the website, the publishing website. It's all book-books.com, ALLBOOK-BOOKS.com.
It's a lot of books.
Yeah, people stumble over that. I usually have to repeat it.
But it's all book-books.com. And you can check out not only this new little chapbook here, Arise and Bow Down to All Nations by Mankh, but also Primal Sanities, the fantastic collection of tributes to Whitman that Mankh and former poet laureate of Suffolk County, George Wallace, put together and edited down. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing with some contributions from all over the world that are just absolutely great. I think we're going to give away first. I want to thank everyone who was here tonight, and
yes,
that includes Darrel Ford, Mark Donnelly, my good pal, Barbara Ryer-Myers, Chris Nicola, Primilla. Say Primilla's last name for me. I don't want to say it.
Took me about 5 years to get this. Venkateswaran.
Venkateswaran.
I think I got it right.
Okay, well, we're close. The current poet laureate of Suffolk County, who's absolutely wonderful and joyous to be around. However, as is a mystery to all of us, we don't know how you get to be poet laureate of Suffolk County, but she's it. So, I guess whatever she did is what you want to do if you want to do that. So Primilla was great. And Ginger Williams, and of course, via phone, Mindy Kronenberg, teaching a poetry class, so we'll let her off the hook for not showing up in person this particular time. If you would like a copy of Primal Sanities, this fantastic tribute to Mr. Whitman, an anthology of poems and essays edited by Mankh and George Wallace, give us a call right now, 631-632-6901. That's 631-632-6901. Mankh, I'd like to thank you personally so much for joining us here on our little Whitman Fest that we do every year.
Quite welcome. Thanks for having us.
And always a pleasure. And I think we're going to go out with a little something from, I don't know, maybe a little something from We're Good Friends. And who doesn't like a band called We're Good Friends? This is called Walt Whitman. Keep dialing 631-632-6901. Get yourself a copy of Primal Sanities. Mankh, thanks so much, and happy birthday, Walt.
Yeah, happy birthday, Walt.